All right, we are only 3 days away. Game day starts. The Iowa caucuses, the first in the nation. Now, this year, voters will have to brave very, very low temperatures, all the way down to negative 30 degrees with the wind chill. But the candidates say that they're confident voters will show up. After all, there's a lot at stake this year and some concern over potential third-party candidates. Now, the No Labels Party is now apparently trying to recruit Chris Christie. They can have him. And foreign policy is very much on everyone's mind. And right now, after the airstrikes against the Houthi rebels last night in Yemen, Joe Biden said today that they should be designated a terror organization, unless, I guess, he forgot that he was the one that took that designation away. Anyway, right when he took office. Take a look.
Are you worried about it as a terrorist group, sir?
I think they are.
Were the strikes successful last night, sir?
Yes.
All right, here with her reaction, former South Carolina governor and UN ambassador and 2024 Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley. You know, it seems that the economy gets the most play because that impacts people's lives daily. But peace and prosperity historically drive elections. We now have conflicts. We have war in Europe. We have war in the Middle East. We have Iran sponsoring terror. You know, in the case of the Houthis, they're the ones that have been providing all their military equipment, their proxy war against Saudi Arabia, their missiles being fired into Israel. You know, so I guess it raises the obvious question about foreign policy. You know, what would the Nikki Haley doctrine be on all three of these issues?
First of all, Sean, I mean, it is a constant topic of conversation that comes up with voters here in Iowa. We've also seen it in New Hampshire. People are worried. They see those wars, and they're worried about what this means. We should always be focused on national security and prevention of war. That's what Joe Biden's missed. The reason all this has happened is because he's been too slow and too weak on everything. We saw it from Afghanistan. We saw it in the fact that Putin surrounded Ukraine a whole year before, and he did nothing. We see it now with Iran. They smell blood in the water. And so what they're doing is they're taking advantage of every situation because they know Joe isn't. And what bothers me even more than that, I've told people what keeps me up at night is what happens between now and Election Day. Because you just showed that clip of Joe Biden. It didn't even feel like he knew where he was.
Yeah, well, it's chilling. I mean, when I first started pointing this out, which was in the election of 2020, you know, I was actually excoriated by some for stating the obvious, that he was weak and frail and a cognitive mess. All right, but more specifically, what should America's role on the world stage be? You know, Joe Biden is, you know, he wants over, $200 billion going to the Ukraine war. That, to me, looks like a proxy war between us and Russia. Joe is pressuring Israel, you know, for a ceasefire. And if I was president, I'd be telling Israel, go win your war. You're a victim of terror. If you extrapolate the population out of Israel and compare it to the U.S., that would be the equivalent of losing 40,000 Americans on October the 7th. My advice to them would be to beat back Hamas in the south, Hezbollah in the north, to take on Iran and take out their refineries and probably their nuclear sites if they want peace in the region for a long period of time. I think they've got to win the war and secure their nation because they're surrounded by a lot of enemies.
Well, the first thing I'll tell you is we should never give cash to any country, friend or foe, because you can't follow it. You can't hold it accountable. You know, take these one at a time. You look at Ukraine. Here's a pro-American, freedom-loving country who was invaded by a thug. 500,000 people have died and been wounded because of Putin. But why should America care about Ukraine? That's a legitimate question to ask. The problem is Biden and no one else is telling the American people the truth. We know, and I saw this every day at the UN, dictators, thugs, and terrorists tell us exactly what they're going to do. They're amazingly transparent. Hamas said they were going to go into Israel. They did. China said they were going to take Hong Kong. We watched it. Russia said they were going to invade Ukraine. It happened. China says Taiwan is next. We better believe them. Russia said once they take Ukraine, Poland and the Baltics are next. Those are NATO countries. That puts America at war. This is about preventing war. It's always been about preventing war. And if we were to support Ukraine with just equipment and ammunition, no cash, that's only 3.5% of our defense budget. The Europeans have paid more than that, and they should. It's their neighborhood. When it comes to Israel, they're the tip of the spear when it comes to defeating terrorism. They're a bright spot in a tough neighborhood. It has never been that Israel needs America. It has always been America needs Israel. And when you look at the fact that on that terrible day of October 7th, when they beheaded those people and burned those babies alive and took those girls from the concert and raped them and dragged their naked bodies through the streets of Gaza, what did they say? Death to Israel, death to America. And if you look back on that horrific day, Sean, of October 7th, that was Putin's birthday. Putin had hit rock bottom. We know that because he had lost 87% of his fighting force that started the war. They'd raised the draft age to 65. They were getting drones from Iran and missiles from North Korea. Who's the happiest person in the world right now? It's Putin. Why? Because the U.S. and the West took their eyes off of Ukraine and moved it to Israel. Putin never called Netanyahu after that, not for 10 days. You know who he did call? He called Hamas, invited them to Russia. They came the next day and they held hands as friends. Russia, China, and Iran are bound together in an unholy alliance because they hate freedom, they hate democracy, and more than anything, they hate America.
I call it the next. It is a new axis of evil. There's no doubt about it. You know, Joe Biden did not demand that Europe protect their own continent first. They should have put the bulk of money. Joe Biden then put handcuffs on Zelensky and said, "Oh, you can't take MiGs from Poland." They offered him 28 MiGs at the time. Then he said, "Oh, and you can't use cluster bombs." Well, at that point, we're throwing our money down the drain because Joe's not allowing Ukraine, and they have fought valiantly, and I agree with you, Putin's a thug and a murderer and a dictator, but Joe Biden put handcuffs on their ability to fight the war. As it relates to Israel...
You're exactly right. You're exactly right.
And on Israel, all he needed to say is go win your war and stop the behind the scenes. Well, he has one message publicly, one message privately. All my sources in Israel say he's putting pressure on Israel not to have a ceasefire and not continue the conflict. No, the message should be beat back the terrorists that were raping, murdering, and killing your citizens in the dark of night. And Joe Biden doesn't seem to have that philosophy, and he's allowed Iran and Russia to get rich because of his energy policies. All of that is impactful to the entire world.
That's exactly right. And that's why our friends don't trust us at this point, and that's why our enemies don't fear us. That's why Joe Biden needs to be out of office, and that's why I intend to get America strong and proud again.
All right. How do you think you're going to do Monday?
I think we're going to have a strong showing on Monday. It's cold. It's really cold, but I think we're going to have a strong showing on Monday.
Yeah, I'm leaving the warm weather of my new state to go to 20 degrees below zero weather. Wow. Anyway, I applaud all of you for being out there.
Layer up. It's cold.
Oh, I'm layering up. I might even get toe and hand warmers on top of it. Appreciate you being with us, Governor. Thank you.